Hi, my name is Ben, this is Boardgame Dad, and today we're talking about the 2 to 4 player game by Pandasaurus Games, Emerge. But in this review, I'm going to be talking about the game with a house rule. And you may be thinking that that's not what a board game reviewer is supposed to do. I'm supposed to review the game according to the rules as are written in the rulebook. And that's a fair point. And in fact, maybe even Pandasaurus Games, who provided this review copy, won't like it either, but this is the company that published Machikoro and Machikoro 2, so something tells me that they may be fans of game revision, and in any case, I am going to argue that the house rule is essential for this game. So here we have Emerge. It's all set up, but the way I have my camera framed, you can't see the entire game board. That's because it is enormous. It's over 3 feet long. So let me show you what is off the screen. So there's nothing here except land, and that is where the supply of birds is supposed to be located. And there's also a round tracker. It starts the game by moving to space 1, and every round new discovery tokens get flipped over. The only other change I've made to this setup is that in a normal game, players begin with their starting island over here in the corners. But in order to display everything within the frame, I've put the starting islands in the middle. There is no significance to where the islands are. The only significance is when these tokens come up. So what would normally happen is these tokens would be down here, the islands would be over there instead, and then the tokens that were here would be revealed once the ship gets to that location. But we're not even going to play an entire game, so I will put those tokens there, and it won't have any effect on teaching these rules. So Emerge is a competitive game with the objective of scoring victory points, and there are 2 ways to score victory points. The first way is to achieve objectives during the game, and these objectives are competitive with more victory points for the first person to accomplish it and fewer as subsequent players obtain those objectives. So we have up to 20 points possible over there. And then the main scoring method is going to be by building these islands. Now, thematically, the game is about discovery. So it's not building islands, it's discovering islands. But the way you represent discovery is by adding tiles to the board. And they emerge, they erupt from these volcanoes in the ocean. So as you discover them, they get taller and taller and taller, giving you these layered pieces. And then as those islands grow, they're going to be getting life forms on them. So plants and crabs and turtles, etc. At the end of the game, you are going to score points equaling the product of all the life forms. So in this case, I have 3 multiplied by the height of the island. So 3 times 3, this island would be 9 points. The first thing that's going to happen is the round marker is going to advance. That's going to reveal more discovery tokens. These discovery tokens can be picked up when an island is placed there. And if the round marker passes a die, those dice get distributed to the players. So for the purple player, the yellow player, and the red player. So you'll start with 6 dice, and you'll have up to 10 during the course of the entire game. Now, the next thing players are going to do is they're going to upgrade or modify their player boards. So modification involves taking one of these tiles and placing it somewhere else on the board. Now, it's advised in the rulebook to take either a plant or an island and place that on top of the seal. You'll see why in a minute. I'm just going to go ahead and place that there. And then all players simultaneously roll their dice. So I'm rolling 7 dice, and all of these are going to go into their spaces. Now, when all players have done that, in turn order, beginning with the start player, they're going to perform an action as determined by the roll of their dice. So one action I can do is to add trees to my island. If I pull this up closer, we can see that the first tree is going to cost 1 die, and the second tree is going to cost 2 die, the third tree for 3 die. Now, because I have that placed here, I actually have a total of 5 dice that can be spent on trees. For a turtle, I would need 3 dice, and I only have 1 here. And for a new island, I would need at least 2 dice, but I only have 1 here. Which is why we use these modifier tiles. So you can see that it says I can add 1 or 2 to a die. So on my turn, what I could do is I could either plant trees. I can't add any turtles because I can't afford it. And there are actually a few more requirements for turtles, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I can't do an island, or so it would seem. But if I use this tile, I can add 2 to my 3, and that becomes a 5, which places that here. Now I can perform the action of building an island. So I will take those off my player board, and I would choose any location on the board. Now, the location doesn't matter for scoring, but it does matter for getting these discovery tokens. So for example, I might want to use this ability, or this ability, or if neither of those appeals to me, maybe I just want to take one randomly. So I could choose, maybe I'll choose this location. And now I've earned the ability to place 1 crab for 1 die. So I'll keep that over by my player board. And every other player would take 1 turn performing 1 action using their dice. It would come back to me, and I could build a tree. So I'd spend 1 die to place the first tree on this island. Now both of my islands have 1 tree. So when it comes my turn again, it's going to cost me 2 dice for the second tree on this one, and 2 dice for the second tree on this one. Now, I don't have to use all my dice. Let's suppose, for the sake of example, that instead of rolling 1s, I had rolled 2 3s. Okay? I don't have enough to place a turtle. Not only that, but another requirement is that you can't have any turtles if you don't have any crabs. And you can't have any crabs if you don't have any trees. So there's actually a food chain or a hierarchy in these discoveries here. You can get a crab next, then you get a turtle, then you get a seal. So in the first round of play, there is no way to get a seal because you need to have a turtle, and you can't have a turtle without a crab. That's why I use the first turn to cover the seal. The only one that doesn't require having something lower on that food chain is the birds. Birds can go anywhere, whether or not there's a tree, whether or not there's an animal, and there's 2 ways to get a bird. The first is to spend 2 dice. So if I had 2 6s, I could spend 2 dice to just take a bird from the mainland way over here. And when the bird comes over, it lands on my island, and birds carry seeds with them. So a plant would come with that bird, and regardless of how many trees are on my island, it's always going to bring a tree. And in fact, you can have up to 4 trees on an island. And adding a bird is the only way to get that 4th tree. Because you can see here that using dice, I'm only allowed to go up to 3 trees. So I could either bring a bird from the mainland, or if the bird was on another player's island, I could spend 3 dice to transfer that bird over to my own island. And that would also grow a tree. So this is one way of stealing victory points from your opponents and does not require any other life to be on the island when you do it. Anyway, to go back to my previous example, and we'll put the bird back. If I have 2 3s here, it's not enough to place a turtle. But what I could do is I could just keep those dice right here, and I could wait for the next round. Or what I could do is I could use one of my tokens at any time during my turn. So this token lets me place one crab for one die. I would discard this, take a die of any number off, and add a crab to an island. Okay? Or the last thing I could do is I could discard any two dice, regardless of the number. They don't have to be matching. Even if this was 3 and a 5, I could take 2 off, and I could buy a token from the market. Okay? The one requirement of buying tokens from this market is that once you begin buying tokens, you can no longer perform any actions up here. So I would always save that for last. So now all players have done this. They've all taken their turn. When we're all done, no, the market gets refreshed. We do this again. So round counter moves up. Everybody modifies again. So for modification, I'll add that you can always discard a modification. If you wish to on your turn, that's free. But there are 2 acceptable moves. Either you can move modifications around. They all get refreshed in a new round. So maybe I'd move that to cover the bird or something. Or I can add. I can either move around or add. I cannot do both. This continues for 8 rounds with players getting more dice and more modifiers. Now, those are the official rules, and that's how I played the game when it was first introduced to me at Essenspiel. However, when I taught the game to my family, I immediately introduced a new rule, and I want you to understand why. So, the thing with this game is, as soon as your dice are rolled, your plan for the round sort of unfolds automatically, and very little of what other opponents are doing is going to influence it. There are only 3 ways in which opponents' actions can influence what you do. There is the placing or stealing of birds, the achieving of objectives, and the taking of discovery tokens from the market. But all of the actions concerning trees, crabs, turtles, seals, and even growing your islands doesn't have any influence on other players at all. So waiting for your turn in order to do those things is not very engaging. So what I've done is I've broken that discovery phase into 2 parts. The first part are the first 5 actions, all of those actions that don't influence other players. We perform all of those actions simultaneously. Then, once everyone's done with those first 5 actions, the second part is the placing of birds. That has to happen in turn order because who you're stealing the bird from is influenced by turn order. So we do that, and during that same phase, people can buy the discovery tokens from the market. Those are the only things that are done with turn order into consideration. Now, with this house rule, there is still 1 contradiction or 2 contradictions remaining. The first is, if you're placing islands simultaneously, there is competition for the discovery tokens that are available on the board. So one way to resolve this is to just leave the discovery tokens face down for the entire game. However, if having the discovery tokens face up is something that you want, what you can do instead is you can place a player piece on the token you're interested in, and if multiple people choose the same token, you can just resolve that in turn order. There's also the matter of achieving objectives. What we've done there is, if multiple players achieve the same objective in the same round, we just let them place both of their player markers on the same number of victory points. I highly prefer this house rule, and in fact, I haven't played the game with my family without this house rule, and I don't want to, because as the game goes on, you're just getting more and more dice, so your turns are just getting longer. It's much better, in my opinion, to just condense that by letting many of those actions be performed simultaneously. So, that's the house rule. Take it or leave it. Now let's talk about this game in terms of its theme, mechanics, components, strategy, and complexity. As far as theme is concerned, while I appreciate all of the figures that are used to represent these discoveries, the rules are more motivated by the scoring mechanic. I mean, thematically, there's no reason why you can only have one crab or one turtle or one seal. And there's also no reason why a turtle can't be on an island without a crab being present. That doesn't make thematic sense. It's just there for the mechanics of scoring. So this is not a very thematic game. It's a very attractive game, and I'll talk about components in a minute here. But for theme, I'd say this game is no more than a 3. Whereas for the mechanics, there's a few things I'm looking for there. One is, to what degree is the game motivated by the mechanics? And this is definitely a game where if you like dice actions, if you like games like Machikoro, you're going to like this game for its mechanics, regardless of the theme. There's that, and then there's also how engaging is it. So for me, the game becomes substantially less engaging when you're taking turns. And I would give the game a 6 for mechanics, but when it's done simultaneously, there's actually sort of it's a lot of fun to manipulate your player board and then play the dice and make an optimal plan with the limited amount of luck mitigation that you have. I would say for mechanics, the game is about an 8. For components, there's 2 things I'm looking for when I rate components. One is how the game looks, and the other is how the components function. So you can just tell from watching, the game is very, very pretty. And I love the wooden components. I love the color. The problems that I have with the components, though, are all about how they function. My first issue is how big this game board is. There's no reason for it to be that large. It actually interferes with gameplay when the only thing that it's doing that's essential for gameplay is counting the round counter. That's all you need. The relative space between the islands doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're adjacent to somebody else or not. You could just have your 4 islands in front of you without a board at all. It actually interferes with visibility. You've got the market of tokens that you have to, it's way over there, and then the pieces are way over there. It just isn't conducive to how this game is designed. If there were objectives that were related to adjacency, then sure, a board would be justified. It's there to look nice, and that, if all it does is look nice, that's not satisfying to me. I'm also disappointed that there's no player aid at all. There's nothing on your board that says that a tree is required for a crab and a crab is required for a turtle. You just have to know that. There's nothing on your board that says that a discovery token costs you 2 dice. You just have to know that. There's nothing that tells you what to do during, each phase of the round in terms of the steps that you take or the order that things are performed. There's nothing that tells you that you can't buy discovery tokens until after all of your discovery actions are done. You just have to know that. All of these things, it's not a complicated game, but also it wouldn't be complicated to just put a player aid on the player's board. And I don't know why it was left out, unless they just didn't want to clutter it because they wanted the game maybe to just look just to stand out for its components in terms of its beauty. It's beautiful, but that has to be in addition to being functional in my book. So I would give the game for components rating a 4. Other people wouldn't. Other people would probably give it, an 8 because it's very attractive. Function first in my book. That's what I look for. For strategy, you look at this game and you think, especially in the first round, there's no decisions to make. The dice tell me what to do, but that's not the case, especially as the game goes on and you get more and more of those modifier tiles. There is plenty of decision making. Now, this is not, some heavy strategy game. It's still a strategically simple, but there's more than it seems at first sight. For strategy, I'd give this game about a 3. And for complexity, I wish there was a player guide. There are some rules that really need that, but it's still not a lot of rules. For complexity, I'd probably give this game a 2. My final thoughts on Emerge. The thing is, we really like this game. We like it a lot, and we like it more every time we play it. Every time we play it, we add the house rule. So can I recommend this game? Absolutely. But I also think that Emerge 2 is right around the corner, or there will be some expansion that addresses some of these complaints that I have. The complaints are there, but it doesn't mean that I'm not loving this game. I also would recommend this if you've enjoyed Machi Koro. But the thing is, Machi Koro, the dice are telling you or determining way more of what you can do in your turn, and Emerge has a great deal of added flexibility with those modifiers. So actually, in my opinion, I like this game more than Machi Koro. I think it's an improvement. And you've heard everything I have to say about what could be different, but that doesn't take away from the overall experience for us, because it is so easy to adapt. Thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed this channel, and if you would like to participate in discussions with me about the games that I'm coming out with, the lists that I'm going to be publishing soon, this week the Patron members have been discussing the top 10 family games of 2023. So if you'd like early access to what I'm about to release, and if you'd like to be conversing with us there on the Discord channel, details about becoming a patron member are in the description. And if that's not your cup of tea, if supporting as a patron isn't something you're interested in, there's also theperfectboardgame.com, which you can always check out. It has all of the family recommendations on there, videos, and much more. That's my personal website that is just very rich resource and many, many features on there. If you haven't taken a look at it, please do. Other than that, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.